Derek Carr benched for the last 2 games of the season.
Derek Carr has been benched. He is done for the 2022 NFL season.
The Raiders are benching Derek Carr, and will start Jarrett Stidham, who's with the New England Patriots, and Josh McDaniels before joining the Las Vegas Raiders.
Derek Carr said goodbye to Raider Nation yesterday.
Stidham, guys, is starting not only week 17, he is starting week 18.
It seems that Derek Carr has played his last football with the Raiders. Some fans say it's a long time coming, while others are very sad to see him go, considering the team that they were prior to Derek Carr's arrival. The second round pick from 2014 has officially been benched for the final 2 games of the 2022 season. When this happened, the Raiders were technically still alive at this point. To add more to it, Derek Carr and the Raiders had agreed that Carr will be inactive and away from the team to avoid distraction moving forward. It's crazy to me that this guy had brought them back to relevance just last year, and he may not even be on the team going forward. Yes, we can chalk it up to 2022 being a bad year, and thus it was time for him to go, but I wanted to dig deep further than that because I do feel like Derek Carr is actually a really good quarterback that was just put in a difficult position time and time again. As this video shows, he has overcome more than most, and he has been a great leader for that locker room. What it do, ladies and gentlemen, it is Triple DS. Thank you guys so much for tuning in once again. Today's video, again, like I said, is about Derek Carr. He did get benched in the final 2 games of the season, and it seems like his time may be done, although the jury's still out. He has a no trade clause, and he just signed an extension just last year. So sit back and relax as we talk about the career retrospect of Derek Carr and what's in store for him moving forward. 2013 was a rough year for the Raiders. They had a 4-12 record. Dennis Allen, their head coach at the time, was on thin ice, and their quarterback room consisted of Terrell Pryor and Matt McGloin. So it's safe to say that they were looking for an upgrade in the signal caller position. Thus, with the second round pick, the Raiders chose Derek Carr out of Fresno State. He initially wasn't going to start right away for the Raiders, but impressed so much in the preseason that the Raiders felt like they had no choice but to start Derek Carr. Derek Carr would soon realize, however, that his rookie year was more of a rebuild year for the Raiders. After an 0-4 start, head coach Dennis Allen was finally fired. In came Tony Sparano as interim head coach. Despite the head coaching change, they would still lose their next 6 games, starting out 0-10. When it was all said and done, the Raiders finished 3-13, but you know what? Derek Carr actually showed promise, going 21 of 12 with touchdowns to interceptions and just over 3,200 passing yards. In 2015, the team hires Jack Del Rio. Jack Del Rio proved to be a great upgrade at head coach as he brought the Raiders back to, I'd say, mediocrity, which is actually much better than they were prior to this, as they improved from their 3-13 record to go 7-9, and Derek Carr in his sophomore season makes the Pro Bowl for the very first time. In year 3, with the pieces of Khalil Mack on the defensive end and Amari Cooper, it seemed like the Raiders were going to be something special. 2016 was the year that the Raiders first qualified for the playoffs since 2002, and get this, they had already qualified by week 14, so almost a month before the playoffs even started, they had already qualified. The biggest standout performance for Carr at this point was his game against the Buccaneers, where he threw a franchise record and a career best to this day, 513 passing yards. Unfortunately for Carr and the Raiders, however, disaster would strike. On Christmas Eve against the Colts, Derek Carr suffers a leg injury in the 4th quarter. More specifically, he suffers a broken right fibula, ending his season. Now, there were claims that Carr could possibly return to the Raiders should they somehow make it all the way to the Super Bowl. They lost to the Texans in the wildcard round. Despite the tragic ending of the season, 2016 proved that they had something special brewing in Oakland. Prior to Carr's injury, he was a genuine MVP candidate, even finishing 3rd in voting after he got hurt. He was even awarded a 5-year, $125 million extension with $40 million of that guaranteed. 2017 did unfortunately prove to be a regression kind of year. The Raiders and Derek Carr fell back to earth, finishing 6-10, with Carr's stats also regressing to just 3,296 passing yards and a 22-13 touchdown to interception ratio. 6-10 isn't great, but you know, it's not horrendous, you know? It's not like 2-14, not 3-13. And if Derek Carr isn't hurt last year, who knows how far the Raiders could have actually gone. Nonetheless, in 2018, Jack Del Rio was surprisingly let go for the Raiders to hire Jon Gruden. And for me, even back then, I thought it was a very head-scratching idea. Yes, I know Jon Gruden has the resume where he has won a Super Bowl, took the Raiders very far. He was successful with the Raiders about 15 years ago, but he hadn't coached in, I think, 7 years. And the amount of money that they were giving this guy, his contract was a 10-year, $100 million deal. 2019 was a bit of a rebuild because Jon Gruden wanted to build his Raiders into the image of his own, so the Raiders did even worse this year compared to last year. They finished 4-12 with Carr's stats having a career high of over 4,000 yards passing, but a career low of just 19 touchdowns to 10 interceptions. Although it wasn't great, there was hope that it was still just a temporary problem. Gruden has 9 more years to figure this out. The 2019 season was a little bit better. It was a step in the right direction. The Raiders were in their last season in Oakland before moving to Vegas. They draft Josh Jacobs and Max Crosby for the defense. The team signs Antonio Brown, so things are looking promising. This is where I want to kind of emphasize Derek Carr's leadership, because at this point, y'all, it is nothing but drama for the Raiders. Let's go ahead and just begin with the AB drama. He misses time due to a cryotherapy mishap, then filed a grievance and threatened to retire over a helmet dispute. He was fined several times for missing team meetings and even threatening general manager Mike Mayock. That specific moment was so out of hand that even Vontaze Burfict had to step in and break it up. Why are they even on the same team? The point is, Antonio Brown was causing a distraction like no other, and I didn't even get into him leaking his phone calls and all of that. The point is, despite the saga that was AB, the team remained afloat, and for the most part, it was thanks to Derek Carr and his leadership. They were even 6-4 at one point, but ultimately did collapse at the end of the season, losing 5 of their last 6 games. It was an improvement to their 4-12 record from last year. 2020, the Raiders officially moved to Vegas, and they also draft Henry Ruggs, so it does show signs that Gruden still to some degree has faith in Carr, because at this point there were questions rumbling if Gruden would keep Carr going forward. I've said this in videos previously, a lot of coaches like to bring in their own quarterback if they're starting anew. 2020 was the COVID year, and really there's nothing that exciting. The Raiders do improve to 8-8, so again, another step in the right direction. Now we've gotten to the 2021 season, and this has got to be the craziest year that any team has ever had to endure.
Jon Gruden made racially insensitive comments about DeMaurice Smith. Then we learned that he was against bringing in a guy like Michael Sam, saying the commissioner should not be encouraging then Rams coach Jeff Fisher to draft queers.
If you're just joining us, we're following some breaking news. Las Vegas Raiders wide receiver Henry Ruggs arrested this morning, accused in a fiery, deadly crash.
Today we waived Damon Arnett. Very painful decision. We spent significant time, effort, and resources trying to help him in all facets of his life.
If y'all thought 2019 with Antonio Brown was crazy, you guys better get ready. If you don't remember what happened in 2021, let me remind you guys of everything that happened. The drama starts with the executives abruptly leaving. Some executives that included the president, the VP of strategy and business, and the CFO. They all abruptly quit. It continues into week 6 when Jon Gruden has his emails leaked back when he was in ESPN, which included homophobic and racist slurs, causing him to resign his position in just year 4 out of a possible 10 years of his contract. Out goes Gruden, in comes Rich Bisaccia from week 7 and beyond. This is also the same year when Henry Ruggs is involved in a fatal car crash where he does kill another driver while driving under the influence of alcohol. Before I go any further, y'all, if you guys are ever under the influence of alcohol or drugs or anything like that, do not drive, y'all. You are putting yourself in danger, you're putting others in danger. Call an Uber, y'all, call a taxi, do what you gotta do, call a friend. That's my personal PSA. With everything that happened with Ruggs, just under a week later, Damon Arnett, their first round pick along with Henry Ruggs the year prior, was released due to a video showing him flexing his firearms and making death threats with those firearms. Just like that, both round 1 picks from 2020 were gone. And despite what happened with Henry Ruggs. In week 17, another Raiders player was arrested for a DUI. Thankfully, he didn't hurt anybody, but with everything that happened with Henry Ruggs, it was another crazy day for the Raiders, another added layer to the drama that is being in Las Vegas. And despite the infinite amount of drama, y'all, I said all that. I think I spent 5-6 minutes talking about just what happened in 2021. We can finally turn towards the positive, because despite all that drama that would throw most teams into the ground to give up for the season, there's too much going on, the Raiders actually prevailed despite all of that. The locker room stays together and they are still playing well. And a big part of that is due to Derek's leadership, along with Rich Bisaccia, keeping the team together, making sure the distractions are held to a minimum, at the very least in the locker room and on the field. The Raiders during this time relied heavily on the pass game, and Derek Carr did not disappoint, tossing a career best and actually a franchise record in pass yards in the season with 4,804. He had 23 touchdowns to 14 interceptions, and the Raiders, through sheer will, muster a 10-7 record. That did include a Week 18 thriller versus the Chargers, and they make the playoffs despite everything. In the wild card, they did come close, but ultimately did lose to the Bengals in the final seconds. Derek Carr himself threw over 300 yards, a touchdown, but threw an interception and did lose a fumble. When you consider everything that happened in 2021 and the fact that the team was able to still remain together and put a playoff run together, it does speak volumes. It takes true leadership and will to get to as far as they did. And now a lot of Derek Carr haters would turn to that wild card game against the Bengals. That man had 10 opportunities to score and they didn't. Me being the Bengals fan, I just want to say I think it was more on our defense than Derek Carr, but that's just me. 2021 for the Raiders is very telling about the leadership that is in that locker room. Derek Carr is one of those leaders, and I think Rich Bisaccia was the other leader. With everything that happened, I genuinely thought that Rich would actually get the full-time head coaching position. Despite all the media circus that was happening, he still guided this team to a 10-7 record and made the playoffs. But that isn't the case, because as we all know, in 2022, the Raiders hire Josh McDaniels. He who himself has a bit of a question mark in terms of head coaching. The only thing that people know about Josh McDaniels is that he is an underling of Bill Belichick. He failed with the Broncos and he backed out at the last possible second to be the coach of the Colts a few years back. Carr signs a 3-year extension for $121 million, which does include a no-trade clause. The Raiders trade for Davante Adams. With the addition of Adams, the Raiders were actually projected to go on a deep playoff run. The team, for the most part, has stayed intact since the playoffs. They've got a better head coach, and they got Davante Adams, a true difference maker. They're hoping Davante Adams does for the Raiders what Jamar Chase does for the Bengals. Are y'all getting tired of these Bengals references? Hope not. But that's not exactly how things went. With the new coach, the new system in play, the Raiders struggle. They are off to a rough start as they come out 2-7 in the first 9 games. This culminates to a 6-9 record through 15 games, and Josh McDaniels decides to bench the longtime Raider for the final 2 games. Although Derek Carr wasn't necessarily playing poorly, he wasn't playing as good as he once was. But it was still very surprising to see him get benched in the last 2 games. The reason given by McDaniels was that he wanted to see what they had in Stidham.
We're going to go ahead and start Jarrett the last couple games of the season here. None of us is happy with where we're at, but we think it's an opportunity to, evaluate a younger player who hasn't had much time to play.
Not only was Derek Carr not the starter anymore, he wasn't even the backup. In fact, he was inactive. Carr and the Raiders agreed that it's best for him to be away from the team for the rest of the year, as it would be a major distraction if he was there. And if there's any more doubt that Derek Carr has played his final snap for Vegas, look no further than his Instagram, where he does send his final farewells to Raider Nation, to the Raiders fans. Quote, "Raider Nation, it breaks my heart I didn't have an opportunity to say goodbye in person. We certainly have been on a roller coaster in our 9 years together. From the bottom of my heart, I am so grateful and appreciative of the years of support you have gave my family and to me. We had our share of both heartbreaking moments and thrilling game-winning drives, and it always felt like you were there next to me. It's especially hard to say goodbye because I can honestly say that I gave you everything I had, every single day, in season and in the off season. It certainly wasn't perfect, but I hope that I was able to leave you with more than a few great memories as Raiders fans. I really doubt the Raiders would release him given all the guaranteed money he has, so Carr would have to waive his no trade clause and look for another team. Considering everything Derek Carr had to endure during his time with the Raiders, it would be a shame if he went out like this, but it seems like Raiders fans are ready to move on themselves. My final thoughts on this are that if Derek Carr goes, I think Davante Adams is also going to want out. His sole reason for coming to the Raiders was to play with Derek Carr. So if he's not there, what are the Raiders doing? It seems like they're going to want to rebuild. Davante Adams is not going to stay here for a rebuild. McDaniels may want to tear it all down, like I said, so you know what? He might actually want to trade Adams to get some picks. And unfortunately for you Raiders fans, if this is the route they're going to take, you guys may be in for another rough set of seasons. I personally don't trust McDaniels. He, to me, has to prove himself because he has failed as a head coach once, and he quit on a team before joining them, just like Bill Belichick actually. And for Derek Carr himself, I think he does have plenty left in the tank. Wherever he goes, he will have a resurgence, and I think with the right system, he could still be a very solid quarterback in this league. Derek Carr to me was a guy who did the best with what he had, in my opinion. He comes across as a very humble and very good guy, and I think that people rally around him because they do believe in him. Do I think Derek Carr is a top 10 quarterback in this league? I'm not too sold on that, but I don't think he's a scrub by any means. I don't think he's a bad quarterback. I don't think he's just an okay quarterback. And when you consider the fact that in his time with the Raiders, he had a grand total of 5 different coaches, if you include interim coaches, and to have the resume that he has now, being a 4-time Pro Bowler, being in the top 100 4 times, having a game where he threw over 500 yards, having a season where he threw just under 5,000 yards. Everything is always circumstantial, but I think Derek Carr will be all right. I think he will have a bounce back wherever he goes. Unfortunately for the Raiders, I don't see that the scenario if y'all hang on to Josh McDaniels. This is just a video that I wanted to do for the career retrospective Derek Carr, because it seems like with this time with the Raiders, it's going to go out on a whimper, and it does suck to see in this football fans' opinion. But what do you guys think? Should this have happened a long time ago? Should the Raiders hang on to him just a little bit longer? I'd love to know your thoughts. I'd also love to know if I missed something. Let me know in the comments if there's something that I missed, something I could have added. But that's gonna do it, y'all. Thank you guys so much for watching. If this is your first time on the channel, smash that subscribe button. We're on the road to 1250 subs. I couldn't do this without you guys. I appreciate your guys' support. And until next time, y'all. Shaboy!